Okay, we're going to get started. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lori Charlton. I'm the chairwoman of the Board of Finance, and I want to welcome everyone here today. This has been an annual tradition of the Board of Finance for, I think, 12 or 13 years before we got interrupted with COVID. So this is the first time we've been together in a long time, and we're very grateful to be able to gather in person with all of you. So before we start, I'd like to invite everyone to stand, and my colleague and our vice chair, John Nicole.
I pledge allegiance
to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going to sit. Okay, again, welcome everyone. I see some familiar faces out there, but I assume some of you are here for the first time. So just quickly about the format and the rules of the road for today. It's pretty simple. We are here to listen to you. This is not a town hall format. We're not going to take questions. We're just here to listen to your feedback about the budget process. And we really appreciate you taking the time to be here with us on a Saturday morning. So the way it will work very simply is if you'd like to make a statement, we'll ask that you come up to the microphone here on my right. Please state your name and address for the record. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. And when you're done, if you would, there is a pad and paper on the stage, and if you wouldn't mind signing in, that will help our recording secretary keep an accurate record of the meeting. So we appreciate that. That's really about it. The only other thing I would ask is that we all just keep it respectful. I know there's been a lot of emotion associated with this budget, particularly on the education side. We hear you. We've heard the feedback. We welcome the feedback. But I just want to ask that please we be respectful to each other and refrain from any personal comments directed toward elected officials or members of the town or the education administration. So with that, if you'd like to come on up, the mic will be yours. And again, please state your name and address for the record.
Good morning. My name is Bud Morton. The address is 95 Field Point Drive. The cost of our public schools is now 2/3 of total spending, and it is rapidly eclipsing all other public services, which I believe is likely to have serious long-term negative consequences. Based on the BOE's budget request, spending will rise 5.4% from last year, and compared to where we were 9 years ago, spending will be up 34%, even though enrollment is down 9%. So spending per pupil will be up 48%, despite only an 18% increase in inflation, and a grand list that is still 2% below its peak back in fiscal year 2011. That's 12 years ago. Education spending is being driven by increases in labor and facility costs and by an expanding scope of educational services that require more resources per student, particularly special education. These upward pressures continue to more than offset any savings from declining enrollment, and for years the Board of Education has resisted making any major structural changes that would provide some relief. More rapid growth in our tax base would help, but growing our grand list will continue to be quite challenging because we live in the failing state of Connecticut. Our regional economic engine, New York City, is facing major pressures. Our currently strong home values are likely to weaken, and commercial property values and development are likely to remain weak. Support for education spending comes from a strong, well-organized, resourceful, and vocal coalition of advocates. Public education households represent about 35% of total Fairfield households. They represent about 40% of registered voters, and they often represent a majority of those who vote in municipal elections. Advocates argue that some Fairfield County towns spend even more per student, and they may argue that a $2.5 million reduction amounts to a trivial 30 cents per share, or per day, for each of Fairfield's 21,000 households. According to the BOE, every dollar in their budget is necessary to pay for instructional and social-emotional needs of students. Structural cost reductions are just too difficult, and there is no need for performance analysis in their budget presentation. The BOE candidly disclaims any responsibility for determining whether the rapid growth in education spending is affordable or might lead to serious negative long-term consequences. The Board of Finance must provide the essential long-term perspective and judgment regarding how much we can afford to spend in order to keep Fairfield both desirable and affordable. And this year it must do so in a climate of heightened economic risk in the aftermath of recent unprecedented and unsustainable monetary and fiscal policies. As I do every year, I respectfully urge you to consider carefully the long-term consequences of continued rapid growth in our education spending. Thank you, and thank you very much for all the hours you put in on our behalf.
Thank you, Mr. Morton. Before the next speaker, my apologies. This is my first time doing this, and I neglected to introduce my board members, so my colleagues here. So let me do that now. Apologies to them. Starting on my right, Mr. Chris DeWitt, Mr. Jim Walsh, Mr. Jack Testani, again, our Vice Chair, John Matola. To my left, Mr. Kevin Stark, Ms. Sheila Marmion, and Mr. Craig Curley. Thank you.
William Lenahan, 42 Alma Drive, Fairfield. Good morning, Board of Finance, and thank you for your enormous time and service spent in the benefit of our town. It is truly greatly appreciated. I request the board to act favorably on the Human Services Budget, Section 6050, especially the transition of 2 part-time positions, Senior Center Director and Social Services Coordinator, to full-time. The COVID pandemic clearly demonstrated socialization needs for 2 key demographics, our children and our seniors. Schools and the Bigelow Center are social focal points. When our schools and senior center were closed, we clearly witnessed the critical socialization needs. Now parents, grandparents, and teachers see the joy on our children's faces. Last week at a senior center meeting, I too witnessed the joy on numerous seniors. The center was abuzz and activity with activity and joy. But as the budget indicated, the senior center has 5,700 members. Programs are back, but back on a limited basis. The programs need to be expanded. The critical needs of our seniors must be met on a full-time basis, not part-time. The National Institute on Aging and other research studies link social isolation of seniors to higher risks of heart disease, dementia, and Alzheimer's, and other health conditions. The Human Services budget seeks to improve senior socialization and meet the many needs of our seniors on a full-time basis, thereby helping to build a healthy senior mind and body. Hence, this budget will help improve the health of our seniors, the aging in place process, and retention of our seniors in town. My request is a small ask relative to the overall budget and the health of our seniors. I assure you this budget will result in significant benefits to our senior community and town. A healthy, age-diversified town clearly benefits all of our residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Melinda Grims, 68 Oxbow Road. Good morning, and thank you for holding this town hall meeting. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to our concerns. My name is Melinda Grims, and my address again is 68 Oxbow Road. I'm not only a resident, but I am a parent of 4 children, 2 of whom are currently in school, Woods, and 1 at Ludlow High School, right here. I'm also an elementary STEAM teacher, so you can see my interests here are both personal and professional. I realize that you're not able to restore any line items, but I thought it might be helpful for you to know what it's like to work in a school right now, and I also wanted to just give you a little bit more information about the STEAM program. First of all, we are one of the very few school districts in Fairfield County that offers a STEAM program at the elementary level, and for those who don't know, it's science, technology, engineering, art, and math. It is something that gives us a leading edge over other school districts. We start teaching the engineering and design process and problem-solving skills from kindergarten through 5th grade. All 11 elementary schools, which translates as 690 fifth graders, recently participated in the Invention Convention, where each student had to think of a problem that was relevant to him or her and then come up with a unique solution. Fascinating experience for us as teachers and for the children. And the days of the expositions, the schools are filled with such an energy of pride and success. We also teach the children coding and robotics, which appeals to every student regardless of their academic level. And the level of engagement and enthusiasm in our STEAM classroom is just a beautiful thing to witness. As I said, the level of engagement is amazing. I just want to give you one quick example. This week, our 3rd grade magnet unit students were given the challenge of coming up with designing a new toy to save a toy store that was going under. They had to create something new. Their creativity was amazing. It would be a shame to see a program that fosters problem solving and creativity. It would be terrible to see it taken away from them. In my opinion, it would be a giant step backwards for our school system. And when I look at what our district has outlined as the vision of the graduate, I see that one of the educational goals is to acquire knowledge in the areas of science, technology, math, language arts, social studies, and world language. The vision goes on to say that all students will be innovators, communicators, collaborators, critical thinkers, and goal-directed and responsible citizens. The STEAM program gives elementary students a firm foundation at which higher math and science courses can build upon. My fear is that when we start making programmatic cuts, then we will have to redefine what the vision of our graduate is. Secondly, I'd like to address the needs of our students. This has been an incredibly, and I can't emphasize the word incredibly difficult 2 years in education for students, teachers, administrators, and support staff. Whether we want to admit it or not, every child going through this pandemic has experienced trauma. Trauma manifests in different ways in different children and at different age levels. What we are seeing are so many fragile children with great social and emotional needs. Many children have fallen behind academically as well. To cut support from them in their neediest times seems cruel and unusual. This is not the time to skimp on our community's most valuable resource, and that is our children. This is the time to invest in our children and the resources and programs that support them. So thank you again for your time, and please carefully consider restoring the money to the Board of Ed.
Thank you.
Hello, Jennifer Valensky, address 1822 Stratfield Road. First, thank you, and I appreciate you all serving on this board and listening to us this morning. I am here to ask you to please restore the Board of Education funding. I am asking as a Fairfield parent, a Fairfield teacher, and a Fairfield citizen. I have 2 children who've gone through the Fairfield public school system. My younger child, almost. She's currently finishing her senior year award. I've been a middle school teacher in Fairfield for over 23 years, and I've seen a lot of changes in our schools over that time. Some good, some bad. But whenever education funding is cut, it's bad. And we see the negative effects in the schools over the next following years. While working with my 6th grade students over the past few years, I have seen huge gaps in their learning and skill sets. Many students that I am teaching now in middle school have very poor organizational skills, if at all. They are not at the grade level they should be at. The district is pushing social emotional learning. There are more kids than ever whose individualized education plan includes counseling goals. Our counseling staff is stretched thin. We've got 1 school psychologist who's doing the work of 2 people, often working until 11 p.m. most school nights. Student behavior is out of control. Several students are lacking manners on how to behave in the school setting, partly because they've been in remote learning for the last 2 years. I suggest you visit any of our school buildings and see what is happening in the schools. Before you make any cuts, Currently, there are 12 middle school teaching positions on the chopping block. Morale is low. One of my colleagues said it's like the Hunger Games in our building. People are afraid. They're afraid they're going to lose their jobs. Teachers and administrators are exhausted. Students are exhausted. Parents are exhausted. This is not the time to cut our budget. Please support our kids, our staff, our community by investing in our kids. Please restore the Board of Ed funding. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Lauren Kinsley. I live at 212 Buena Vista Road. I have lived in Fairfield for 11 years, and I've been teaching here for 17. I want to thank you for being on the board and listening to our community today. I'm here to explain how these cuts to paraprofessional positions, library media paras, and STEAM and classroom teachers will directly impact our students. I'll paint a picture for you in a classroom of 18 to 20 students with para support. I will be able to meet with the students that are not meeting grade level standards daily. A para will also meet with these students again and support them as they close the gaps in their learning. These students will not need tier 2 instruction outside of the classroom. If our class sizes increase and our para staff decreases, we will be scrambling to meet the needs of these students that are struggling. Now, these students may be 4 per class, 8 per grade, or 48 students per school are entered into the Tier 2 or Tier 3 SRBI instruction. Without support staff in the classroom, we will overload the language arts specialists and the math and science teachers. Now, classroom teachers won't have opportunities for coaching, and novice teachers will have limited resources for their students. As academics gaps widen, our special education and outplacement costs will increase significantly. We are emerging from a 2-year-long pandemic. Our students need stability in their lives. Our youngest learners were forced to navigate their social and emotional skills at home while their parents worked in the other room. Some people say these kids are resilient. Educators say kids don't know what resilient means. They need us to teach them. Library paras order incredible books about social emotional health. Library paras keep the library open for up to 300 checkouts per day. Library paras pull curated sets of books so teachers can meet the needs of all students. If library paras are cut, stability is cut, and a safe and healthy connection has been cut from our students' lives. This is not the message we want to send. Do not cut people, classroom teachers, paras, STEAM teachers from the budget. In order to fulfill the Fairfield vision of a graduate, we need STEAM teachers to teach innovation and critical thinking. We need paras to support students in becoming communicators and collaborators. And we need small class sizes to teach collaboration, responsible citizenship, and teach goal-directed, resilient learners. I urge you to look elsewhere. Please restore the Board of Education funding. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sharon Myers, and I live at 25 Lawrence Road. I've lived in Fairfield my whole life. Excuse me, sorry. I am a product of the Fairfield Public Schools. My 3 children went through the Fairfield Public Schools, and I have been a teacher in the Fairfield Public Schools for 20 years. I'm currently teaching math here at Ludlow High School. I became a teacher because I love to teach. Like my colleagues, we are in this profession to help children learn and grow and discover their passions. We are clearly not in this profession to reach our full earning potential. Fairfield has always been considered a good school system. A good school system is only good if it has good teachers. A teacher wants all of their students to learn and grow and develop into lifelong learners and respectful human beings. Our students, I'm so sorry. Our students come to us with very diverse needs, and in order to meet their needs, we need support. We need class sizes to be manageable, and we need paraprofessionals and specialists. These supports are critical, not only for the students' well-being and ability to reach their full potential, but also for the well-being and effectiveness of the teachers. We are role models. We are caretakers. We are educators. Our jobs require us to be able to relate to the students and demonstrate a love of learning. If you think back to your favorite or best teacher, okay, in true teacher fashion, I'm going to give you a minute to think back to your favorite or best teacher. I would bet your memory is of a teacher that you would describe as loving to teach, a teacher that had passion and energy. Your memory would not be of a teacher that was feeling burnt out and stretched to their limits and frustrated by the reality that they could not possibly meet the needs of the students in the class. For Fairfield to remain a good school system, we need to take care of our teachers. We are the definition of a good school system. We cannot allow conditions in our schools to exhaust our teachers. This will affect every aspect of the Fairfield education system. I consider myself a good teacher. I am surrounded by amazing colleagues, but a teacher's job is challenging. The pandemic made it even more so. We are at a critical time right now. Teachers nationwide are feeling overextended and exhausted. It has been a rough 2 years. We need to nurture the teachers and actually give them extra support. This is not the time to be taking support away. What would your favorite teacher want you to do? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Laura Carson. I live at 187 Buena Vista. I'm just asked, first of all, thank you very much for having this. Really appreciate it. And I do understand how much time, how many hours you put into this process. I'm asking you please to restore the Board of Ed budget that was unanimously passed by the Board of Ed. People that study what is really needed in schools. My kids have grown up. I have no kids in the schools, and I have no problem paying fully for the Board of Ed budget that they're asking. And to me, there's two reasons. There's a financial smart reason to do it, and there's also a moral reason to do it. And listening to these teachers, just so emotional and turmoil that they've been put through for the last 2 years, what message are we sending that we won't even fully fund this budget? It's just beyond the pale to me. And, you know, schools are our #1 asset in our town, okay? And it's the one economic driver. People move here for one reason, for mostly one reason, for the schools. And if we don't fund that asset fully, we're not going to be able to compete with other towns. And I know we heard that it's eating up a big ton of our total budget. If you look at other towns, the schools are your #1 reason, big budget item, and it's pretty much in line with the other towns. So we have to just understand it's a huge monolith of expenses, but it's well worth it. And so if we fund our schools, your people will move here, your home values will increase or stay, you know, competitive. So just from that point of view, why would you shortchange your #1 asset? Then morally, I really believe we owe it to our kids to educate them. And schools provide more than education. It provides, you know, emotional well-being. It provides, you know, just so many things that I'm not going to go into, but we really need to fund that. And from what I've learned, if we fund the school budget fully, I think for every $10,000 you pay in taxes, it's $71 more a year. So are your kids not worth just another $71 to fund this budget? The answer is, of course they are. So please, please consider funding our budget fully. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Carson, could you say?
Hi there. My name is Randy Cohen, and I live at 200 Lloyd Drive in Fairfield, Connecticut. And I want to thank all of you for devoting so much hard work and time to trying to, you know, assess where to put our town's funds, which really, you know, goes to our values and, you know, sustaining our town and keeping what makes it a wonderful place to live and really, you know, pushing that forward as best we can with, you know, what we have available. And I want to thank also everyone here that's come to speak, that already spoke. You know, I feel proud to be a part of this community that cares so much about where our money goes and about our schools. Now, I have 2 children in the Fairfield public school system currently. I also have a 2-year-old. And my oldest, who's a 4th grade girl, is in something called Math Academy, which is a unique and fantastically successful program, which many parents and students as young as 3rd grade have come out and passionately supported the Board of Ed over the 3 years of its existence. It has been life-changing for our children. And they're now spending their classroom time learning and being challenged, rather than being asked to sit quietly without a math curriculum that provides new learning for them, as they are in many, many towns in Connecticut. And the Fairfield community should be so proud of this incredible program. And I am here today to support the superintendent's requested budget. If you, I guess someone else shared the $71 per household statistic for the whole budget. I, computed less than $10 per household as regarding these cuts and what they would be, what households would be asked to pay to fully funded versus the cuts in question. When you think about cutting elementary school Spanish and the STEAM program and the paras and the middle school staff, and adding students to the minimum class sizes, that's definitely going to negatively affect our property values by a lot more than $10. As the prior speaker said, people do move here for the schools. Cutting funding will significantly worsen the school quality and desirability of our town, and certainly it does not make sense educationally at this critical time when we are recovering from this pandemic that has hit the schools. They have been among the hardest hit places, and our kids have suffered so much. Please support the budget as requested by Mr. Cummings, and please add 0.5 FTE more so we can keep our math teacher next year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Owen Guernsey. I'm a middle school student at Fairfield Woods Middle School. I live at 241 Brookside Drive. I wanted to share about what's happening at our schools. My own principal sits outside the boys' bathroom to stop the chaos from erupting inside of there, caused by the pandemic. But really, I wanted to talk about some of my own middle school teachers who have helped me a lot. My own LA teacher helped me think about this essay, really, because she is teaching me about all these things, and I would hate to see her have to leave, and I think it would be horrible because she's taught me the things that have allowed me to think about writing this. And it would be horrible to see anyone have to go. And I wanted to help them in the same way they've helped me. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Matthew McInnes. I live at 301 Saskville Road. I'm a student here at Ludlow, and I want to urge you to reinstate the money that was cut from the budget by the Board of Selectmen. We're coming out of one of the worst times for learning and education across the board. Teachers are stressed, students are stressed. Someone who walks around these halls and sees everyone and talks to people, I can tell you, people aren't learning how they should be. They are behind, and we need to fund that so that they can catch up. As former speakers have said, one of the driving factors of people moving to Fairfield is the education. That's why my parents moved here. Property values will be impacted by this. And not just by this, I see a lot of students who are underperforming in the classroom turning to drugs, crime, because they don't feel like they can catch up. And it's programs like these in our school that help them to do that. And, if we don't fund them, what message are we sending to those students? And it's not just that, it's to the teachers too. The teachers at this school have helped me in every single aspect of my life. I am comfortable talking to the majority of them. And if we don't fund this budget, are we saying that they aren't important? I don't know who it was, but a speaker who is a teacher said that everybody is exhausted. And I see that. I see that the teachers around me aren't able to teach to their full potential. I see that they're tired and that they're stressed, and that they're worried that, they won't be able to teach the students what they need to succeed. This budget and the Board of Education budget was unanimously approved. It's not some partisan issue. This is something that the elected members of the Board of Education, the superintendent, everyone who is very familiar with these issues has said that we need this money. And I think that this board should reinstate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Heather Dyer, 240 Mayfair Road. Good morning. I'm a 6th grade teacher at Roger Ludlow Middle School. This is my 15th year teaching in Fairfield. I am also a proud graduate of the Fairfield Public Schools. I am here to ask you to restore the Board of Education budget. The budget cuts proposed would eliminate 19 kindergarten paraprofessionals, 11 library paraprofessionals, the entire elementary world language program, the entire STEAM program, 5 additional elementary classroom teachers, and 12 middle school teachers. 4 of these 12 middle school teacher eliminations have already been confirmed. I use the word eliminate because there is simply no way for the system to reabsorb 30 paraprofessionals and 27 teachers into other positions. There are not enough open positions to go around. I am a middle school teacher. This is my first year teaching at Roger Ludlow Middle. After 9 years teaching 5th grade, I thought my new job was a promotion. I stand before you today because if you do not restore the Board of Education budget, you will eliminate me. You will take away my job, along with the jobs of 56 other teachers and paraprofessionals, all of whom are equally important. A kindergarten paraprofessional shows a child how to hold a pencil, helps a child to form letters correctly, and patiently listens to those first storytelling attempts that go on for days. A kindergarten para makes sure that a child has someone to play with at recess. A library para helps a child to pick out just right books, safely browse online databases, and research for school projects. An elementary world language teacher encourages students to learn and care about cultures beyond their own, giving them a broader perspective of the world. STEAM teachers create hands-on projects that make every child an innovator, an inventor, and a problem solver. The STEAM teacher inspires future engineers, doctors, and scientists. A middle school teacher doggedly pursues a connection with even the most sullen of tweens and teenagers. A middle school teacher spends hours every night developing lessons that will not only teach content, but foster engagement, empathy, and enthusiasm. At the end of the workday, a middle school teacher also coaches basketball, runs the yearbook club, and directs the school play. If you do not restore the Board of Education budget, our neediest learners will suffer. Entire career paths will be lost to our students forever. Class sizes will grow. Post-pandemic learning gaps will continue to increase. There will be fewer after-school activities and more behavior problems. You have the power to prevent these problems. You can save 57 dedicated professionals from elimination and protect our students' futures. All you have to do is restore the education budget. I hope you will reinvest in education here today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Herb Lime Cooler, 83 Spruce Street. I serve as coordinating director for Fairfield Senior Advocates and newest member of the Affordable Housing Committee. I also would like to reiterate your dedicated service, not just in the budget process, but your great stewardship of town finances throughout the year. Much appreciated. We're all indebted to you. Keeping our seniors in our town and state has been Fairfield Senior Advocates' mission for the past 6 years. It's certainly good for our senior community. Moreover, it's good for all of us. The reality is that seniors are important to everyone's finances because the expected cost of losing a senior household, that's the expected cost of losing a senior household, approaches $10,000 per year, a kind of annuity loss. FSA advocates not just for the existing senior community, however, but for what I like to call aspiring seniors, all who want to age and retire in Fairfield one day. Our focus areas have been better housing options for everyone, including our seniors and those in need of affordable housing, tax laws that make retirement here more affordable for seniors, programs that support our most vulnerable populations, and very importantly, understanding, engaging with and educating our community. We act in both within the town and also in Hartford. This is a very busy time for us in the state legislature. We support the 2 budgeted Bigelow Center positions that my colleague Bill Lenahan referred to before. These are now part-time positions, but would become full-time. They really represent important investments in our seniors and those who need our social services. In closing, I'd like also to cite the work of the Board of Finance Committee, led by Mr. DeWitt, and also the other members were Ms. Marmion and Mr. Walsh, and the full board toward the funding, the augmented funding for the Senior Disabled Tax Relief Program, focused on our lowest income seniors. We also appreciate the hard work that was expended by the RTM committee that preceded this. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Paula Healy. Thanks so much for having us speak today. I live at 1882 North Benson Road. I'm a Fairfield resident and a kindergarten teacher at North Stratfield. This is my 32nd year teaching, 28 of those in the Fairfield Public Schools. In fact, I've had many of your children over the years. The majority of my 32 years have been spent in kindergarten and first grade. I am here today to advocate for our youngest learners. Our children have spent almost half of their young lives in a pandemic. They have experienced much of their formative early childhood years in quarantined isolation with only their immediate family members. When they did finally venture out, they interacted in a socially distant world of masks. Understandably, this has resulted in significant social and emotional challenges: reading facial cues, interacting with peers, listening for and following directions, self-control demands, turn-taking, conversational skills, social resilience, independence, and on and on. In addition, many of them did not have a comprehensive preschool experience. Many of them came in lacking some of the skills we would normally see: how to hold a crayon, recognize letters in your name, independently manage your jacket, backpack, lunchbox, restroom independence. In no way is this a reflection of their parents. We have caring, supportive, hardworking parents in Fairfield. It is the unfortunate consequence of growing up in a pandemic. We are up to the challenge of helping our kindergartners through this time. We have some of the best teachers in the world, but we are one teacher in a room of at least 20 whose academic and social emotional needs have increased exponentially. If we are to truly do justice in educating these children, we must meet the unique learning needs created by this pandemic. Our paraprofessionals are absolutely critical to this process. The needs that are such that one person in a classroom is just not enough to provide the very necessary level of support required to meet the needs of our youngest children. Our paras help provide behavioral, emotional, and academic support to all the students in our classroom. They are instrumental in the quality education and care we provide in kindergarten. Our paraprofessionals provide real-time, everyday, direct support to our children. Cutting them would be felt by every child every day. The children know them, love them, trust them, and rely on them. Our children need them, and so do our teachers. Paraprofessionals, in a word, are invaluable. Yes, we could save a little money by cutting paraprofessionals now.
be felt acutely at the student level. But if we don't invest in our youngest students at the beginning of their learning journey in Fairfield Public Schools, we will pay a much higher price just a few years down the road. Shouldn't we invest everything we can into our youngest citizens at a time when they need us the most? Yes, this pandemic is coming to an end, but in the world of education, now is where the real work begins, and we need your support. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you, everyone on the board. My name is Cindy Wapnitsky. I live at 41 Valley View Place. I have 3 children who went through the Fairfield Public School System. They're all grown up now. I have a child who is autistic. He is 33 years old. He went through the Fairfield Public School System starting at the ECC when it was housed at Osborne Hill School in its infancy. Okay, also, I am a retired teacher, special education teacher, and I created a school at Congregation Bethel where we worked very, very, very closely with the Early Childhood Center in Fairfield. We would not have been able to accomplish what we accomplished without our relationship to these teachers and paraprofessionals in Fairfield. Now back to my son. He functions independently now. He has a job. I can think back to every paraprofessional and every teacher who guided him along the way and the things that they did for him that went above and beyond, such as taking him to the Pepsi Cola factory and having him sit in a truck and pretend to drive because he had an obsession with Pepsi Cola. Who does that? Okay? Not to mention having so much experience in the early childhood field. Early intervention is the key to success. I cannot tell you how many children who are identified at 2 and 3 years old having learning difficulties or specific problems, who later on, without this type of intervention, without paraprofessionals, would be so much more of a burden on society. My son didn't tie his shoes until he was 13 years old, and I remember the occupational therapist sitting with him to teach him how to tie his shoes. I can't imagine a town without this. I can't imagine a town without strong early childhood intervention. I wish every single child in the country could get early childhood education for free, but clearly we don't have that right now. There is a national attack on teachers, and it is very disheartening to me. And I also believe that cutting this budget is extremely short-sighted, and everyone will pay for it sometime down the road. And I will say one more thing, maybe this is a controversial thing to say, but when you do this, you are also hurting the middle class, which is what keeps a town like this alive, what keeps all towns alive in this country. You need a strong middle class. Not everyone can afford to pull their children out of a public school and put them in a private school where they feel that they will receive everything that you want your children to receive because you can pay for it, okay? That's a choice that people have, but a strong public school system, especially, well, I'm biased, early childhood intervention and just early childhood education, which a lot of people think children just go to school at 3 and 4 years old to play. It's a misconception. So please, please restore this funding. I don't have children in this school system anymore, but what people did for my children, I want to give back to other people's children and to keep the town strong so that I don't have to sell my house and move. I want to stay here, and I want to see children thrive.
Thank you.
That's a hard act to follow. As people who love little children, it's really affected me. But I am, my name is Kate Chalau. I live at 1135 Jennings Road, and I'm a kindergarten teacher in Fairfield. I've done it for 19 years, but obviously I've been in early childhood for decades. I thought it would be helpful for you to understand what that you hear the support that paras give kindergarten and the rest of the class, and I thought it would be helpful to you to understand what that support is from the child's point of view. So I'm going to talk about 4 children in my class who are a conglomeration of many other children, but just to let you know how important that support is and how it affects these children. We're going to start with our first child who comes to school, not really ready for school, enthusiastic, wants to be a part of it, but not quite able to hold a pencil, can't draw a picture or write her name. Now, with a wise kindergarten teacher like she has, I can train the para to go off and help this child. So for 10 or 15 minutes a day in the beginning of the school year, we can strengthen those hands, grow those muscles, and get that child ready to go on to first grade eventually and do writer's workshop. Where's that child going to be without that para support? Floundering in first grade, floundering in second and third, and will probably last a lot longer. Then I have Jack. Came to school, happy to be there, but doesn't quite have that bathroom thing down. Yeah, that happens in kindergarten. 3 times this week we had a bathroom accident. With a paraprofessional to support Jack, she sneaks him off into the bathroom. We take care of everything. Everyone else stays with the teacher, and the learning goes on. Without that para, Jack's embarrassed because it's the teacher who has to help him. All the kids know what happened, and they lose a lot of learning while I'm tied up with one child in the back of the room. That's the reality of kindergarten. Then we have Ryan. He came to school already reading. He's the top of his class, hit benchmark by December. His teacher's gotten a lot of money spent on her learning how to do small groups and reading, but she probably won't get to Ryan because those kids that are in SRBI and the strugglers, they need her help all the time. And without para support that the teacher can train to take those strugglers once in a while, Ryan's not going to get very much attention. He's definitely not going to get the education he deserves without para support. And last but not least, we have Allison. She's the average child in kindergarten class. No behavioral issues, no learning issues, but she'll have dozens of one-to-one teacher assessments during the school year. With a paraprofessional in the classroom, Allison gets to come out in the hallway with the teacher, face-to-face, eye contact, no distractions, and we can really assess what she knows. With no paraprofessional in the classroom, Allison gets the teacher, 20 other kids in the background, distracting her, distracting the teacher, while those assessments are being given. How fair is that? We heard someone talk today about long-term negative effects. Not giving children in kindergarten the basis that they need to go on to first grade, second grade, third grade really has a long-term negative effect, and we pay the price in the long run. Paraprofessionals, in the scheme of things, don't cost us much, but they provide us plenty. Please consider that for the school budget.
Thank you.
Good morning. I want to thank you for your time. My name is Judy Salemme, 11 Morehouse Drive in Fairfield, as you know. I'm asking you to consider fully funding the education budget. I'm a Fairfield resident, I am a parent, and I'm an elementary school library media specialist, so I wanted to tell you firsthand what's happening in our libraries. One of the positions, as you know, at risk of being cut is the elementary library media paraprofessional position. This role is essential to keeping school libraries available to our students and our staff members. According to the American Library Association and numerous studies, students at schools with better funded library media centers tend to achieve higher reading scores on average. Essentially, providing young learners with reading materials and educational supports in school libraries has an immediate and measurable impact on learners. Our library learning centers serve as areas for direct instruction by the library media specialists, but they're also fully functioning libraries. The library paraprofessionals allow for circulation of materials on an ongoing and often flexible basis while I'm teaching. As a parent of 3 young children, 2 currently at the elementary level, 1 coming soon, I can tell you firsthand that the library's support of independent reading is invaluable. With our libraries open and staffed, we're ensuring that every child has access to reading materials. We're essentially taking children to the library on a daily basis, allowing them guided choice, reader's advisory, and sending them home with materials that help them grow as readers and learners forever. The elementary library paraprofessionals have also participated in district-led training On our Destiny Library Management System, it's one of the many specializations of this position. Cataloging materials, managing circulation and the distribution of materials to classrooms to support curriculum-related units, providing individualized and small group instructional support, and providing technology support in schools that now have one-to-one Chromebooks. Some of the many duties of these paraprofessionals. We continue to adapt, to train, and to take on every change that comes. The library media paraprofessionals provide specialized services that cannot be replaced. Finally, the library media paraprofessionals support our schools by assisting with varied duties throughout the school day. These include, but are not limited to, arrival and dismissal duty, covering for grade level and PPT meetings, monitoring lunch and recess, as well as supporting special education students. They are an integral part of our school community. They keep our students safe, happy, and healthy, while keeping books in their hands too, often with a smile on their face, and at the elementary school level, maybe a song and dance to boot. Cutting library paraprofessionals would ultimately affect the level of instructional programming in our libraries, limit the library media specialist's ability to collaborate with classroom teachers, and reduce the library media specialist's contact time with students. The removal of this position would be a giant step backwards for Fairfield Public Schools. Thank you for your time. I hope you'll consider this request and others that have been made today to fully fund our education budget. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sharon Pastilli, 107 Loader Drive. I am a member of the RTM, but my comments today are as me as a citizen and not as a member of any caucus. I'm asking that you please restore the $2.5 million from the education budget that was cut by the Board of Selectmen. The entire community recognizes the negative impact that the pandemic has had on our young people in terms of mental health and in terms of learning loss. Fairfield's education system fuels our real estate market, fuels our local economy. More than anything, it is for the common good of our community, and especially for the common good of our students who have lost more than any other students have in the past 100 years. Therefore, if we believe in investing in our future, it is imperative that in this year, more than any year, we need to fully fund our education budget. Also, I've listened so far to 2 of the 5 hearings. I would ask that the tone of civility be restored. I was disappointed that some board members were dismayed at parents who wrote in to advocate for the budget, that the education budget be restored. This is why we're elected, to hear from our constituents. It's the reason why we're here. It is the people's government. I would also ask in general that we treat our Board of Ed employees and our town employees with the same respect that we would give others in our place of work, in a restaurant, in our place of worship, or in the supermarket line. We are, in fact, all in this together. Please restore the $2.5 million to our schools for the common good of Fairfield. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nicole Stanton, 1041 Burroughs Road. I'm a proud constituent of that woman right there. Thank you all for your service and the opportunity to speak. Here we are, March 2022, in a world that none of us could have expected or predicted. We are, as a community, beginning to pick up the pieces after the disruption, delays, depression, and divisiveness of a global pandemic, a pandemic that continues to claim 5,000 lives a day around the globe. I am very sad for what all of our children and all of us have endured. I watched my college-age musician lose all opportunity to perform. My college-age biology student attend his classes and labs remotely for nearly a year. And my now high school senior have only one of her 4 years in high school uninterrupted and defined by COVID. She recently turned to me and said, "Mom, you do realize we are all basically high school sophomores applying to college, right?" She's right. She knows what has been lost, and I have actual fear that she's going to choose her college off of TikTok. So, go Friars. In all seriousness, my children are and will continue to work to regain what was lost from their education and emotional development, as will all of the students, teachers, and administrators of FPS. I am asking you today to trust the judgment of your fellow elected officials, the bipartisan Board of Education, and restore the funding that was cut from the budget. They and Mr. Cumming approved that budget. This is their purview. They have done the work, and they deserve our support. There is no way to roll back 2 years. But if you can restore that $2.5 million, we're beginning to make a start at repairing some of the damage. If the pandemic has taught us anything, it's that we ask so much more of our schools than we ever knew. Education, childcare, emotional wellness, basic nutrition. Fully funding that budget will allow our schools to continue to serve those roles that are essential to our children, our community, and our society. Now, some of you know me and you know that I have 3 children, and we are 20 years in the Fairfield Public School System. All 3 of my children attended ECC. The oldest one attended with echolalic speech, the inability to hold a pencil, and delays across every area where delays could be identified. He went to elementary school, having graduated from services, and continued to struggle socially. Then he found band. Then he found band teachers. And what I'm going to say to you is that that child who could not express his desires in any other way than echoing what his parents say is about to earn his master's degree in music education at UConn. And that is because of these schools. And I will fight for these schools so that more kids like Nicholas can come through and change the lives and the futures of the next kids. The last thing I want to say, I am asking that in all public discourse, we are guided by empathy, respect, and civility. Words matter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Board of Finance. My name's Gordon Mackenzie. I live here in Fairfield at 11 Palmer Bridge in the Greenfield Hunt residential area, and I am a volunteer with Fairfield Senior Advocates. I am here to support the budget request by the Human Services Department to upgrade the 2 positions at the Bigelow Senior Center and Social Services Department from their current part-time status to full-time. Have any of you actually been to the center? As I look at you, you all look very young, so maybe not. Welcome. Maybe you have not noticed the depth and richness of the activities at the Senior Center. For those who have not been there, let me name some examples of what they offer. Support for tax filing and instruction on how to avoid computer scams directed at seniors. Game activities for groups ranging from chess to pinochle to Scrabble to canasta to pool to pickleball, where it's very difficult to get a reservation. It is so busy. Cultural enhancements like art tours, painting lessons, old movies, book clubs, and lecture series. Hobby facilities for woodworking and quilting. Physical training sessions like Zumba, Tai Chi, yoga, Pilates, morning exercise group, and weight training. Group sessions for those with chronic diseases, low vision, grieving, and who can forget the hundreds of Fairfield citizens, including me, going to the center to get their multiple COVID shots and booster. Helping individual seniors to go through the incredibly complex road to understanding and applying for medical services, such as Medicaid. If you've never had a chance to look at a Medicaid application, it would torment you. Medicare Savings Program, home care, as well as funding assistance, which there are many, including heating, food, and other needs. And oh, did I mention, lunches served 3 days a week. Provision of local transportation services and organized trips ranging from Mystic Seaport to Stu Leonard's. Think of all the organizational effort required to make these offerings happen. And that means every week those happen. Fairfield has 14,000 residents aged 60 and over. That's almost 23% of Fairfield's population. I think it's important that we support this facility in every way we can. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Jessica Keene. I'm a resident at 112 Taunton Road. I'm here this morning to thank you for your time as a community, but also to request that you restore the funding to our Fairfield Public Schools. I'm a teacher at McKinley and a parent of children, students at Roger Ludlow Middle School and Riverfield Elementary. For the past 2 years, our motto at McKinley has been all hands on deck. My role at McKinley as an ESL teacher is to support our 70 English language learners. Our bilingual kindergarten paras and world language teachers have been invaluable assets over the past 2 years, helping communicate distance learning communication, technology, how to access meals for our families who do not speak English at home. Just in the last 2 weeks, elementary school teachers held parent-teacher conferences. At McKinley, we were able to provide translators to parents in Spanish, Portuguese, Arabic, and Gujarati by utilizing our bilingual kindergarten paras and world language teachers. If we as a community are going to commit to a learning environment that promotes true equity and inclusion, we need to support the funding necessary to help all students and families access all that Fairfield Public Schools has to offer. Thank you for your commitment to our town, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Marta Mwamblakutu. I'm a resident of Fairfield. I am a parent of 2 children in the public schools, and I am an elementary world language teacher. Thank you for serving on the board. What I can tell you from my experience as a teacher is that our elementary world language class is often the first time that students have had their own cultures validated in school. Not only students from Spanish-speaking backgrounds, but students from all backgrounds. In our class discussions of language, geography, culture, students are making connections to their own language, heritage, and cultures. They see themselves reflected and become more connected with each other, a connection that is especially crucial in these times where many have become disconnected from each other due to the pandemic. I see students beaming with pride as they feel that validation, and I see amazement as students learn about each other. This is crucial to a positive sense of self and community. The feeling of empowerment that comes from students as they realize that they can communicate with new worlds through exploring another language helps them develop confidence in their ability to become a global citizen. This level of joy and eagerness is something really special in a 3rd grader. It is something that is not quite as easy to capture as they get older. Losing elementary world language would erase the experience of these students and inhibit their global understanding. How can we achieve the vision of a graduate if we don't do everything we can to lay this groundwork at a young age? As a parent of 2 elementary students in Fairfield, I can say that the specials are often the highlight of their day at school. The specialists and our supportive paraprofessionals are of the utmost importance to the social and emotional well-being of our students. These are sometimes the only adults and spaces where some students feel connection. Now is not the time to be taking away these pillars supporting our children. Students need these adults in their lives now more than ever. As a taxpayer, parent, and educator, I can say that every penny we invest in our Fairfield students now will pay off tremendously in the future. I urge the Board of Finance to consider restoring funds to our education budget. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Good morning, Riney Noor, 83 Alberta Street. Thank you for your service to our town, spoken by what my family refers to career town volunteer. And I wasn't going to speak until I heard Andrew speak, and I cannot possibly be as eloquent as the people speaking before me. But my focus as a volunteer right now is on prevention. And when Andrew mentioned that his peers are looking to unhealthy ways to cope with their trauma, and as a parent of 4 young adults who somehow made it through this pandemic and are trying to launch their adult lives, I really, really urge you to restore the education funding to the budget as requested by the Board of Education. Because being penny wise and pound foolish is not what we want to be. While I like to save a buck as much as the next person, and having 2 kids still in college, I tell you, it's tough. But it's much tougher to bury your child because of social emotional issues. It's much tougher to have a child with lifelong addiction issues because of undetected mental health issues. And the cost to society are much, much higher than, I don't know what the extra dollars would be on our mill rate right now. So I really add my voice to my fellow speakers here to ask you respectfully to restore the Board of Education funding as requested, because I trust in our Board of Education. I trust that they did the work. I trust that the administration did the work. And this is not a foolish dance and song to just get what you want because there's always a cut. I think that is something that we need to not listen to those voices. So thank you very much. I appreciate all you do.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Kathleen Rupert. I live at 180 Warwick Ave, and I'm a math science teacher at Jennings School. My 2 children attended Fairfield Public Schools. Thank you for holding this forum today and for serving on the Board of Finance. I appreciate the long hours you put into making difficult decisions on behalf of this town. I'm here to ask you to restore funding to the Board of Education. The proposed budget recommends decreasing the number of paraprofessionals across the district in elementary schools. I can tell you in no uncertain terms that the paraprofessionals in our schools are invaluable to the students and teachers. They work with students in all grade levels, supporting special education and general education students with integrity, patience, and care. They work for little, but you would never know it, because they help everywhere and are an integral and necessary part of our schools. We are just starting to understand the academic and emotional effects of the global pandemic on our students. This is not the time to reduce the number of teachers and paraprofessionals, as they have a direct impact on our students and teachers and our students every day. If anything, we should be increasing these positions. Another recommendation is to cut the library paraprofessionals, which would be a big mistake. This is a very specialized paraprofessional position. While the library para can go out into the school and fill in for lunch duty or help in a classroom, no other paraprofessional can easily step into the library para's role. He or she knows the library systems, provides regular tech support, assists the librarian in lessons that engage the students in technology and library skills, and helps the library function smoothly each day. The library paraprofessional role is very important to the high-quality library media program. Lastly, I would like to highlight the exceptional program called STEAM in the elementary schools. Established a few years ago, this program provides students with an opportunity to explore and apply science, technology, and engineering skills. The STEAM teacher currently works in 2 schools and serves between 600 and 700 students each week. This program helps students develop the ability to solve problems and explore engineering concepts through discourse and hands-on experience. They learn that failing is as part of their learning, and they grow comfortable in seeking different solutions to problems. The interactive nature of this class is rich and lively and helps to prepare students as future problem solvers. I implore you to restore funding to the Board of Education. Our students depend on you. Thank you again for your time today and for the time you give serving as members of the Board of Finance.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Sherry Myro, and I live at 196 Stevenson Road, and I've lived in Fairfield since 1985. I've been a business owner in this town. I've had 3 children who have gone through the school system. I have had a grandson go through this school system. And presently, a new title to my name is senior citizen. I've been employed by the Board of Ed for roughly 28 years as a paraprofessional. I am also the vice president of the Para Union. I've seen lots of changes in these 28 years. We are the lowest paid bargaining unit for the board, yet we always seem to be the first on the chopping block. We've heard numerous times how we are the backbone of the school system. I'm here to tell you why cutting 30 paras will be a huge mistake. Kindergarten teachers are dealing with children who have not attended preschool due to COVID. They are having separation anxiety from their parents, and some are having toileting issues, and teachers are expected to deal with this themselves when they have classrooms of 20+ children all to themselves. If you take away kindergarten paras, these teachers have no backups. Library paras, as others, are constantly pulled to sub for teachers who are out sick or attending child studies or PPTs. This forces schools to close their libraries because the LMC teacher is busy teaching classes. We couldn't have volunteers in before due to COVID and safety factors. Now that things are opening up, we don't have an influx of people volunteering. Fairfield is an expensive place to live, and it often takes 2 incomes to make ends meet. We also have parents with younger siblings at home that doesn't allow them to volunteer. Without these extra paras, we cannot cover all the classrooms that are needing to be covered. I hope this board will truly look at the budget and see if they can't protect these jobs that are wanting to be cut. I'd like to leave you with a parting thought. I have a friend whose children attend Stratford School, and they needed a sub for a gym teacher, and they found no one. Their superintendent came down and subbed that day. I understand that there are budget cuts that need to be made. Times are tough, but perhaps we shouldn't be starting from the bottom up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Amy Guerrero. I'm the mother of 3 and married to a beloved, passionate, and dedicated teacher at Ward High School. I taught at North Stratfield School from 2001 when we moved here to 2003. I was very honored to be able to have taught with Sharon Myers there. Then I took time off to raise my 3 kids. Fortunate enough to do that. I am now a school library media specialist in a neighboring district and appreciate all the library media specialists here who have spoken on behalf of the importance of our school libraries. I'm also an active member, volunteer, at my son's Boy Scout troop for the last 7 or so years. So I work with a lot of young people. I appreciate your very, very difficult position and job at balancing our town's budget. And I just want to say thank you for your dedication. I so appreciate the many, many hours. And I appreciate this opportunity every year to have this public comment. I hope to be able to balance our own budget, to be able to continue to afford to live here in Fairfield with my dear husband so that we can enjoy the wonderful opportunities and activities at the Senior Center. But I'm here to talk about the Board of Ed budget. As you've heard teachers and students passionately here speak, our teachers, we and our students are truly suffering. And now is not the time to cut the Board of Ed budget. All 3 of my children are string players. During the lockdown, my 2 boys taught themselves to play guitar. Music gave them resilience. And I'm here wearing this sweatshirt to remind you of the resilience of Ward students and to also remind you that our students are still suffering. My older boy is suffering from depression, and I'm so grateful to the music education so that he could embrace music to help him through this pandemic. His friend was not so lucky. I underscore, like I said, all of what the professional educators have said here today, so I'm not going to repeat. I just want to say that Jen Valensky said everything that I wanted to say, and all three of my children thrived at the middle school, at Fairfield Woods Middle School. So please, please, please restore the Board of Ed budget. I'm also here to ask you to support the library budget. As a child, the public library was a sanctuary for me as a child of new immigrants to this country. As a stay-at-home mom in Fairfield, I was a regular patron of both libraries. And over these last 20 years, I've seen how our public library provides sanctuary for so many of our Fairfield citizens, our youngest and our oldest citizens. So it's a vital hub of our community. Again, I just want to say thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for your time and your efforts and your job. So thank you, thank you.
Thank you. I just want to know, I know it's a Saturday morning and everyone's been patiently waiting and you probably have other things to do. I don't believe I mentioned it earlier, but each of our board members will be sharing their overall thoughts on the budget and responding their general responses to some of what we've heard today after all of our speakers have had an opportunity. So I hope as many of you as possible can stick around for that. Thank you.
Hi, Katie Flynn, 204 Grandview Road. I am here to speak in support of restoring the reduction made to the Board of Education's operating budget. Their proposed budget was passed by that body unanimously after reducing the superintendent's proposed budget by close to $1.7 million. The bipartisan approval of this budget represents the student needs that drive that body and this budget. The past 2 years have proved the most devastating time for public education in the history of this country. We have seen our educators here in Fairfield pivot and persevere, all with the overarching objective to keep our kids supported and educated through these incredibly trying times. And I can tell you as a parent that they have done it superbly. Thank yous are simply not enough for what our staff has provided to this community and our children. I was fine until all the North Stratfield staff talked today. Mentally, emotionally, and physically, even prior to the pandemic, we have seen a laundry list of never-ending additions to our educators and school districts' responsibilities. Security and technology, a dramatic rise in special education needs that began prior to the pandemic and have only massively been exacerbated under these conditions. Additional unfunded state requirements, social emotional struggles across levels, and not nearly enough resources to address them. Since the 2013-14 school year, Fairfield has added an additional 985 state-defined high-need students. That encompasses ELL, special needs, and free and reduced lunch. Since 2013-14 to this school year budget, we have seen an outplacement jump from 72 to 146. More and more continuously added to their plates, yet here we are again, reductions. But this year, after 2 years of the pandemic, I find it embarrassing to have to be standing here in a room, not celebrating our staff with accolades and rewards as other communities have, but instead having to again advocate to restore millions of needed dollars. We say we are a community that values education, but do our actions in the last 2 decades of education budget history here in Fairfield really support those statements? Just this year, debate about inflation and the cost to the taxpayer. Does the school district not face these same inflation cost barriers and concerns? Comments about the percentage of families with school-aged children in town. What we don't see in that snapshot number is the families that have benefited from those educations, the young families that have moved here for them, and the taxpayers who benefit from our school district and their home value every day. Debate about declining enrollment, when we have heard detailed explanation from the superintendent and elected Board of Education that the dip in general education enrollment is eclipsed by the increased needs in special education in other areas. We still have 8 schools that are not fully HVAC'd. What used to be seen as a comfort issue has, in my educational lifetime, become, post-Columbine for myself and post-Sandy Hook for my children, a safety issue. And during COVID, a more pressing health issue. We have seen neighboring communities like Westport, Greenwich, and Stamford have to take buildings completely offline because of mold and structural issues. Years of educational reductions to our budgets and subsequent deferred maintenance to keep those reductions away from children in the classroom have resulted in millions, in risk to millions, if not close to $1 billion in town assets. And this week, the 3rd superintendent resigned from the Fairfield Public Schools since my family has moved here just 7 years ago. Now is the time for investment in our school district. Our most valuable asset is taxpayers. It's also just the right thing to do for our community right now, for our staff, and most, above all, for our students. I thank you all for your time and service. As a volunteer, I know the immense amount you all give, but please look at this year as a snapshot and restore the funding to the Board of Education budget. Thank you.
Thank you.
I am Steve Baker, 634 Beach Road. Thanks for the invitation today. I'm usually here, I've been here for the last 12 years speaking to you, usually making a statement on behalf of the PTA, but today I'd just like to talk from the heart. And the first thing I'd like to do is just get off my chest this and put to bed this ridiculous talking point that we're not cutting the budget, we're cutting the increase to the budget. And for me, that, that's like saying, well, if I have to pay $10 for 10 apples today, and next year they're going to cost $15, but you're only going to give me $12, I'm going to get less apples. So, just maintaining the status quo is not cutting an increase to the budget. So, I understand the process of this body is to understand what the town can afford. And, I grew up in this town. I graduated from this school. My wife graduated from this school. Our daughters graduated from this school. We've got siblings who've graduated from this school. Our parents both live in town. Our parents have made sacrifices to stay in town with their grandparents, downsizing and other things. I understand that you have to take into account all these people when making your decision of what the town can afford. But I also read in the patch, that the value of real estate has gone up 30% over the past year, and that people are coming and can't find houses to buy here. They want to spend so much money to come to this town. I have a feeling that I heard today that it's $71 to increase in taxes to restore the Board of Education budget. I think the town can afford it. I think the town can afford that $71. I really, I look at this body, and there's one thing that is different for me this year than the last 12 years is that the body has changed. And I believe the body has changed because the majority of the people in Fairfield who voted for people who support the education budget. And, I really hope that those people respect their constituents and the majority of people who put them here in this body, and keep them in mind and restore the funds cut to the education budget. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kelly McWinney. I live at 947 Churchill Road. I want to thank all of you for giving us this forum to speak, and I especially want to thank Mr. Curley, who was at the Board of Ed Town Hall. The breadth and depth of the experience with the Board of Ed members, it goes so far, and unless you are really in tune with what they're doing, it's hard to understand the scope of what's being talked about today. Thank you, Mr. Curley. My children returned to in-person school in August of 2020. When you compare that to the fact that most of my adult friends are only being asked now to come back into the office, it's amazing to me what our staff has done for our students. They've been in the trenches. You've heard from them. It's very emotional for me to hear some of my children's past teachers talk about the pain they're in right now. And I'm ashamed I'm ashamed of our town, and I'm ashamed this reduction is saying to them, no, do more now, do more. Take more kids. We know it's a crisis, but you need to do more. It's embarrassing. Sorry. The pandemic, in many ways, only pulled back the curtain on the issues that were already there. Our kids were already in crisis. Social media, everything that we did not experience when their age has created a lot of problems. And I don't think that everything that came out of the pandemic is new. I just think we can see it better now. Sorry. For years, people have been sounding the alarms as we've trimmed around the edges of the education budget year after year, pulling off more pieces, taking it apart. And people have been saying, this is going to get to the kids eventually. You can only cut so much until the kids feel it. Well, now we know. This is the budget that if the Board of Selectmen's cuts go through, these children are going to feel it. And they are going to feel it very, very painfully. Hearing about what's going on, I have children at the elementary school, the middle school, and the high school, and I'm seeing it all. And good kids are in crisis. And when a good kid is in crisis, the emotional strain on the teachers and the other students, even if they're muddling through, is severe. At this point, I know I'm just rambling, so I'm just going to say, please put this money back. Now is not the time. And I also just want to throw in a pitch. I don't believe in only advocating for one group. Please take care of our seniors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Suzanne Meska, 123 Rygate Road. I'd like to thank you all for your responses to my numerous emails. I felt I owed you all a in-person, I am who I am, the person behind the emails requesting in-person board presentations and commissions. I come today because I find this budget before you a little concerning. We're talking on the town side of efficiencies of scale, and yet the town side of the budget in various areas is not efficient in scale. We are standing here today listening to parents and teachers defending the Board of Education budget, and there have been times where I have been pro and against the Board of Ed budget, but in full respect to the Board of Ed, this year the board took painstaking time to go back and cut their own budget before even presenting it to you. Something which, you know, in the 17 years I have sat watching the Board of Finance review the Board of Education budget, that has been a critique. And I think that in fairness, they have come before you with a budget that is fair. You know, what I think we have to look at is the conflicting messages that we send. We spend $1.5 million on redoing Gould Manor Park, something we can budget for 20 years. I get it, it's a bonded issue. But we also need to look at the fact that you've decided that we might not need some of the spending on education, or on conservation, or on DPW. And I realize that a lot of these came from the administration, but I worry that our roads are terrible, yet we decrease DPW. We are facing overdevelopment in a town where we've decided to decrease conservation. I know you can't put a person back, but what message does that send? That we are not funding conservation properly, or we're not funding DPW. To listen to the police budget, and while I'm all for safety and public safety, we have an increase in the police budget at a time where the police are saying there's no increase in crime. That's not what's driving their budget. So we have pension numbers with a 7% actuarial assumption that we just don't seem to be able to hit. So we continue to fund. Healthcare insurance continues to rise. We have to figure out a way to make a balance here. If we're going to invest in the buildings that we house our students in, we have to invest in the education that we're going to offer them. And I feel the Board of Ed, in looking at what was presented to them to what they brought forth to you, was a fair position. You know, this budget and the role of efficiencies and the comments of politics, I get it. Everyone has a color or a shade or what they want to do. But this is Fairfield. People are put here because we all live together. We're neighbors who care about each other. At least that's how I hope. That's what I want to believe, that this is not a political statement, that this is a statement about where we see the future of Fairfield going and how we want to fund it to get there. Yes, we have to be cognizant. It is hard for our seniors. And I can't understand why, if we're going to put money into the senior center and fix it, which we desperately need to do since it was once my elementary school, why we wouldn't have full-time leadership at a center that we're building for. I don't know. I've always said you have the most unenviable position. This is the toughest board, in my opinion, to sit on. It's the toughest board to, have to make the decisions that will affect people all over town, whether you're a senior or a parent or an employee of this town. But please, we need to figure out what direction you want to take it forward in. And I hope that we can find where that ruling is. I don't have the answer. I wish I did. I just don't. But please, just look at what's been brought forth to you. I'm sure there are other ways we can find ways to cut things. I mean, we seem to have no problem stamping a 20-year bonded capital project. We have no problem spending ARPA money. So let's figure out a way to make the tax base affordable, but meet the needs of the people who we're serving. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Jill Vergara. I live at 271 Old Post Road, and I'm also a representative on the RTM serving District 7. I just wanted to comment on this forum and thank you for enabling us to meet in this way. I was thinking to myself when I was sitting in the audience that I haven't attended a town meeting like this and looked at everyone face to face in 2 years. The last time I attended a public meeting was at a Board of Health meeting on March 9th, 2020. So I think that this is an amazing opportunity, and I wanted to urge all of us, you and other boards and commissions, to go back to in-person. I don't know what has taken us so long to do this. I know me, and as well as many other members of the RTM, have wanted to do this for a really long time. And I don't know why other towns have been able to do it, but we can do it. I wanted to commend the Board of Education for figuring it out and meeting in person. I think it's a vital part of who we are and making good decisions and looking at each other face to face. We're not automatons, and we're becoming that over the screen. And I look at you, I look at Chris, Jim, Jack, John, Lori, Kevin, Sheila, Craig, and I know I can reach out to each one of you, and that we're all Fairfielders, we're a community, but I think that it's breaking down on WebEx, and we need to go back to in-person, so I really wanted to urge all of us to think about doing that. And thank you for providing that forum for us. And also mention that I am amazed by the eloquence of so many of these speakers, and people who are participating in this way today seem to have been educated with public education, and that's a vital ingredient to our civic duties and our government. And so that makes me think that it's really vital to be funding our education properly. I have 2 kids in the public schools, one in 9th grade and one in 6th grade. I do see them having struggles that I never had to go through. And this is not the time. We cannot afford to underfund our schools at this moment. We really cannot. It's so important to give our students and our teachers what they need at this moment. And I'm asking you to restore that money to the Board of Education budget. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, Jennifer Maxon Kennelly. I live on Edgewood Place. I'm here before you as a Fairfield resident, Fairfield taxpayer, and of course as a Fairfield Board of Education member. I wanted to start as kind of, I guess possibly one of the last speakers, referencing the very first speaker. And first, I would like to say that I do have something very much in common with Mr. Morton. I think we both share a great appreciation for the functioning of the Fairfield government, that this exchange between citizens and our volunteer elected officials as a structure is something that is irreplaceable. And that as we look at charter revision, I hope everybody remembers exactly meetings like this, which are truly an outstanding way, and I don't care about the efficiencies, a truly outstanding way for government to work for its citizens in a way that serves everybody well. But at that point, I then deviate from some of Mr. Morton's messages, and I'd like to speak to that I don't think that this is a time to speak negatively of the idea that we are, in fact, have a budget allocation which does expand the scope of educational services. I think the Board of Education knows that, owns it, and had to invest in it. We have had to expand educational services. This is not the education of 2 decades ago, 1 decade ago, half a decade ago. We are having to do more in our schools than ever before, and that is a reality. It's not something that we wish for, but it is something that our students need. And in fact, this is not a time to refer to needs in quotation marks. And for those of you who read the letter, you saw that. This is not needs. These are real. These are real people, and these are real struggling students, some of whom we can tell, some of whom we have yet to discover the full nature of their needs. I teach high school now in Greenwich, and before that, I taught 15 years at an inner city school in New York. 79% of the students at or below the poverty line, many children of immigrants. I have never seen in a classroom what I am seeing right now in terms of the struggles, and that's at the high school level. But what I can't make the case better than some of our own staff members have been for their specific positions and their specific, their perception of the impact that these cuts would have. But what I would like to caution the Board of Finance, and I'm hoping that I don't hear it in the closing remarks, or I'll be interested to hear how you spin it. But I'm hoping you do not fall back on the oft-repeated phrase, and I can only imagine how many times it has occurred to you as you were hearing all of the speakers here this morning, the oft-repeated phrase that the Board of Finance does not determine line items. It is true, you do not determine line items. But for anyone to think, the Board of Ed was asked this point blank at our town hall, can we cut, and just to be clear, it's $3 million because of the adjustment to the insurance. Can we cut $3 million and it not impact children? No. The answer is no. Now, the list that was put out as a preliminary idea of what structural change could look like, that's what a lot of the speakers here today have spoken to. And so if the defense is, well, we can afford the $3 million cut, but we recognize that we hope the Board of Ed does not cut from paras. I hear that point. But there is no way that a $3 million cut isn't impacting somebody, and that the structural changes, if they simply get moved to the high school level, there will be equal devastation. It'll just be of a different nature, of children in a different stage of their life, but every bit as fragile. Cut freshman soccer, cut a popular elective, increase the size of a civics class to 30, you are very negatively impacting how those children will be served, how their needs will be met, and how that teacher will be able to do his or her job. And so I respectfully ask that you please reconsider the actions of the Board of Selectmen and acknowledge that a case has been made of a demonstrated need that is worthy of full investment. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Judas. I live at 59 Cedar Woods Lane in Fairfield. Thank you for hearing all of us today. There's been so many amazing things said, and unfortunately, I'm last. That was not the intent. I'm here today to encourage you to restore funding to the Board of Ed budget. I would have preferred for my 8th grade daughter to speak today, but it wasn't available. She's volunteering at a farm for children with special needs. She has a passion for horses and a passion for helping others. These were passions that were encouraged by her kindergarten para. I read so many kindergarten stories and looked at pictures that Miss Kalfas helped her with. When we were discussing the cuts that may be made to the Fairfield Public Schools, my children both echoed they couldn't imagine their elementary school career without their paras and their teachers. They made an enormous impact on them academically and morally. I'm in my 25th year of teaching high school. I love kids, I love teaching, and I love being a pivotal part of someone's life at this age. I just told my supervisor yesterday, I love what I do, but I don't know how much longer I can fully support all of my students. We need the smaller class sizes. We need the support staff now more than ever. We have more kids in crisis now than ever before. I do feel students can and will come out of this, but it's going to take the support of so many, and particularly our schools, when you think of how many hours our children spend there. An investment in our students now is an investment that will pay us back as a community in so many ways for years to come. Thank you, and I hope you'll consider this when you're making your final decision.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you for speaking. We appreciate and we value all of your input, truly value it. So thank you again, and thank you for being here. I want to give an opportunity for my colleagues to speak to you for just a few minutes, to react perhaps to some of what they've heard today, and if they so choose to maybe give their preliminary thoughts on this budget process and what they're thinking, or anything else they'd like to say. So I will start at my right with my colleague, Mr. Chris DeWitt, and if he'd like to make a statement, go ahead.
Does this come online? There we go. Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris DeWitt, good morning. Thank you for everyone who came today, and thank you for staying. It's always frustrating for me when people walk in here and say something, and I'm concerned about the process, and then walk out the door. So I appreciate everyone staying, and I appreciate all the comments. It's not surprising that we have a lot of advocates for the youngest Fairfielders here, and for some of the elder Fairfielders here, and I think it's wonderful, and I appreciate all the comments. We have to deal with all of the Fairfielders, right? And there's a big part of the middle of Fairfield that don't have advocates. And I've said it many times in this forum. A lot of you are sick of hearing me say it. But there's the people, and someone mentioned it, who want the roads paved, and they want their snow plowed, and they want the fields to be green and mowed and manicured and all those other things. So this board not only has to consider the Board of Education and the social services, but everything in the center. There's a couple comments I'd like to address directly. Skimping on our kids. This Board of Education budget, and I'm just going to talk numbers here, right, is a $7.5 million increase from last year. So we can talk about decreases all we like, but it is a $7.5 million increase. That's just fact. Fairfield is an expensive place to live. It certainly is. Back to my last point. We have to deal with all of the parts of this budget, and we're happy to do so. But just to keep that in mind as you hear us going through our last meeting and through the process, that it's our job to keep Fairfield affordable at at what level we can. But there was one comment that I really loved, right? Keeping Fairfield a wonderful place to live. And boy, if I could write a mission statement for our board, maybe that would be it. Keeping Fairfield a wonderful place to live is all of those components. It's the Board of Ed, it's the seniors. You know, I'm on the senior side of that equation more than the the younger side, my twins went through the school system. Many of their teachers are here today. I see a couple of them. They did amazing. They're at Stonehill College, doing amazing. The school system has been wonderful to my family. And again, just going through that, I just want to help you understand that, you know, listening to the process, we really have to look at all of the parts of this budget. And I think that's it. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to me. And thank you for watching the process. And remember that there's a lot of other things to advocate for in our town. So thank you. Mr. Walsh.
Jim Walsh, I want to echo what Mr. DeWitt said. I would like to thank everybody for being here. It is great to see people in person again. This is definitely always my most favorite Board of Finance budget meeting because we get to hear directly from our constituents, and it's really kind of where the rubber meets the road, and to hear how we're doing, what your thoughts are. So I appreciate everybody and being here today. But I also want to echo, strongly echo, the comments by our RTM representative, Jill Vergara. This board has to start meeting in public immediately. We have to follow the lead of the Board of Education, the Retirement Board, and other boards in this town that have done so that we can hear from you in person as soon as possible. We cannot wait for going to hybrid things and waiting for supply chain issues to release the software and hardware that we need. We need to start meeting in person immediately, just like the Board of Ed does. We need to hear from you. We need to hear from you. You need to hear from the experts that we have before us in person. You need to ask questions in person. We need to hear from you. So I am hoping that that starts to happen, and I implore our chair to start making it happen as soon as possible. In regards to the budget, we say this every year, it's a complete balancing act between all the constituencies, all the services that we need. The town side has had cuts to it for a number of years. We're kind of to the bone, and I understand we're at that point on the Board of Education side as well. When I hear a cut list come out from our superintendent, where every single thing on the list affects children, it is scary. I mean, to cut that many paras, or at least even suggest it, I mean, that decision is going to be made by, and there's members here of our Board of Education. But to that even be suggested is kind of scary because of the reasons many people mentioned here today. I'm hoping that doesn't happen. I will also say it was very educational to start seeing the para budget and start looking at it as closely as they did this year. It was shocking to see what they're paid. Shocking. Shocking. And that needs to be looked at, and they need to be paid a living wage. I mean, seriously. So that should be looked at a little bit more closely. I was also surprised in seeing the cut list that not seeing any type of central administration change. When we had Dr. Title before us, he would tell us all the time when cuts need to be made. This is going to be shared equally by everyone. I'm going to look to affect everything in the Board of Education so that the effects are minimal to each area. I did not see that in the cut list that was presented and sent around to all the parents. What I saw was it went to hit the children the hardest, and that was very concerning. I mean, central administration is still adding director positions, and if I see another executive director added to it, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, we added somebody for communications. Basically a PR / get the message out. All that stuff was done, that work was done by central administration before and should still be being done. Getting rid of that position and the overtime that went into it to almost pay $120,000 would save 6 paras right there. Right there. What's benefiting the children more? 6 paras or somebody writing emails and sending other communication letters out? So I think that also needs to be looked at. There are some structural changes. The Board of Finance has had meetings with the Board of Education about it, and I know they're working on it. But there's a lot, some of the schools have a lot of extra seats, specifically up Dwight, and the board wants to spend $50 million on redoing Dwight, but it's half empty. We've got to look at that, because if we're really going to have air conditioning in all the schools, which I think is a great idea, where are we going to spend money? Because we can't do it all. We cannot do it all. So we're going to have to look at that. The town budget, I have to say, when I first got the budget, adding 2 police officers didn't seem like a great idea. It seems like a better idea. All I hear about is crime. I mean, maybe because it's where I live down in the, I mean, I think every area in town is affected by crime. I think the area by Stratfield Road is severely affected by crime. I think areas of Southport now, the beach area, we seem to have lots of people coming in to steal our cars for some reason. But they made a pretty good case for that, I will tell you. And it's hard to get police officers now. We keep getting raided by other communities for our police officers. So it's driving our overtime for the current police officers that are staying higher. And my last thing, I'm just gonna, there'd be a lot more money for air conditioning if we did not have the problems caused with the last administration and the fill pile. There's been some money spent, but the money that we're going to have to spend on that fill pile is probably about close to half of the amount needed for air conditioning, which is extremely sad. So we have to learn from that experience, and unfortunately we're going to have to pay for that experience. And you're going to be probably hearing about that next year. It's just, it's horrible. But I will tell you it's going to be tough, but I appreciate hearing from everybody, but it's going to be tough to work through this budget. I haven't made up my decision yet, but I appreciate hearing from all of you today. So thank you very much for coming.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jack Testani. I appreciate, again, as my colleagues have said, everyone coming out and speaking tonight. I, sort of want to dovetail off of what Mr. Walsh and Mr. DeWitt have been talking about. Number one, I thought everyone was very eloquent and articulate in what they had to say. Number two, one of the things we're charged with as a board is to talk about the totality of the town budget. So it's been talked about by my colleagues. We have to consider the Board of Ed, paving, all the other areas that you've heard about this morning. So first I want to reassure you that in terms of the education budget, we all evaluate it very seriously, try to figure out what would be in the best interests of the students and of the town. As a father of now 2 adult males that went through a school system, I too went to many different kinds of hearings about public education. They both graduated, they're both very, I'm very grateful that they're both gainfully employed and have families. So their part of the education, happened in a successful way, I'm happy to say. In terms of some of the other expenditures, Mr. Walsh alluded to it. It's in addition to the fill pile, there's different areas of the town. I know someone alluded to Gould Manor. There was some, potential problems there as far as different effects from the fill pile types of infiltration. You may have heard about Penfield Pavilion. All of these types of considerations in terms of where the town is going to have to expend some of its money, again, are some of the things that we have to discuss as far as how we're going to weigh the budget. Mr. Walsh and I, for those that have been watching or listening to some of our meetings, have sort of harped, for lack of a better word, on public meetings, one of, I know, our chair's favorite topics, with regard to how much we would propose to meet in public. I'm in the same line as Mr. Walsh. I think we should have met in public weeks ago. I know the Human Services Commission, as an example, and the Board of Ed, I know Mr. Walsh alluded to it, also meets in person, so again, I would implore us to try to do that as soon as possible. So again, I just want to thank everyone for coming. Again, I want to reassure you all that what we have to consider as far as where there have been increases to the budget, the $8 million or $7.9 million to the Board of Ed, and again, other departments within the town where we can create more efficiencies, where we may want to change, and where we can move forward from here. Haven't made my decision yet either as far as where I think the town may benefit the most. But having said that, I just want to make sure you all understand that we heard what you had to say, we listened to it, and I appreciate you all coming out. Thank you so much.
Hi everyone, John Matola. I think I've been on the Board of Finance for 7 or 8 years now. I lose track. Sometimes it's a little bit of a blur. I also was on the Board of Education many years ago, served as its chair for a year and vice chair for, I think, 2 years. So, and actually did 1 term on the RTM. First of all, I want to thank all of you for coming out today. It's good to see all of you and have a live meeting like this. It's very important, and it's nice to be together again. I mean, there's a Rolling Stones song that says you can't always get what you want, and I think we're all familiar with that song. And I kind of use that phrase when I'm looking at our budget process and what certain departments are seeking from a Board of Education to the town side. With that said, I think there's going to be ways we can save on the town side as we go through this budget process. The one thing that I find a little inequitable is that a Board of Ed asks for a certain amount of money, which is cut, but the town is asking for a significant increase, and the town side wants to do all these things. So we as a Board of Finance need to look at that to see if there's some things and savings or things we can do to minimize the increase on the town side. And that's what we're all struggling with right now. So, and I do think, although I'm not 100% sure yet, I'm still analyzing this, still want to have discussions with our colleagues. I do think there's room to restore some of the money on the Board of Ed side and do it in an equitable manner that doesn't raise taxes to a real significant extent. So that's what we're all struggling with. I hear what you said today. I appreciate it. I do agree that this is really an unprecedented time. We've been through a lot the last 2 years. And so I hear you. I think we're all struggling with this, and we still have some more work to do. So I know you'll all be listening and following the process for the next, 4 or 5 days. So thank you for coming out today.
Hi, Kevin Stark. I'm surprised nobody wanted to talk about the Harbor Management Commission or storm drains. Nobody? Let's do some math out loud, okay? If you never had kids, I could see how you could object to this budget. But like 35% of you, well, maybe not the people in this room, but the people in town, you have kids in school. And I would think at least 35%, probably more, had kids in school. That means you got a lot of value from the Fairfield Public Schools, right? We spend a little over $19,000 per pupil per year, right? Real money out the door. So if you're a family with 2 kids, K through 12, do the math. That amounts to $500,000 of educational benefit that you receive. Average tax bill in town is about $12,000. Again, do the math. Divide 500,000 by 12,000. How many years is that? It's 42 years, okay? So you're gonna take a long time to pay that value back, and that puts aside police, fire, roads, Penfield Pavilion, anything. You're getting all that stuff for free, in a sense, okay? Now, let's benchmark it, right? The $19,000 isn't extravagant against any other school district in the area of a town of similar wealth. What's extravagant? Let's benchmark it against that. We have 2 private schools in town. That's extravagant. My son goes to Umpqua. Tuition is approaching $40,000. Fairfield Country Day is slightly more than that. I have 2 kids who are 13 years apart in age. Same wife, by the way. People always ask that. So when my older son was at Umpqua, it was like $23,000. That's 75% inflation in 13 years. The town school budget, yes, it's going up in excess of the rate of inflation, but not like it is in private school. It's a fact of life that education expenses are going up around the country. It's not really Fairfield's job to do something about that specifically. It's also not the town's job to do something about inflation generally. If this budget increase goes through to the tune of the extra $2.5 million, your taxes go up by about 1.3% versus the almost 1% that's in this first select woman's budget. The 0.3% is not really going to make a lot of difference to most people in this room. If you want to not be affected by this, you have to move to a place with no kids. And when I thought of that, I realized the inner child in me must be very alive, because it reminded me of the movie Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Do you remember that? The land of Bulgaria, where there's no kids because the Baroness like throws them all in a dungeon. Well, I mean, Fairfield's not Bulgaria, thank God. Anyway, back to reality. If you look at the Board of Education budget, not the superintendent's proposed cut list, which I will agree with people on the other side of the aisle was a little bit sensational, where are the real increases coming in? Computers, for one, that's a pretty big ask. The laptops that the schools are using are like 7 years old. If I could make a laptop last half that long, I'd be really happy. You know when you put your coffee mug on the top of the car and then you drive off? If you look closely at my laptop, I did that with my laptop a few weeks ago. So I don't think that's a big ask. And then the other one, which we all know about, is special ed, right? And why are we spending more money on that? It's pretty obvious. The pandemic, social media, putting a lot of stress on kids, right? Stress on me, for that matter. If we have to spend more money on wellness, what's the best vehicle to use for that? It is the schools, right? There's lots and lots of professionals who know how to talk to kids and who know how to help kids. It's the best delivery vehicle we could imagine. I think that's what we're spending on. Okay, last thing. So, you know, as multiple people have said, we can't tell the BOE which line items to cut. I think there would be bipartisan support, and I say that because at least one Democrat and I think a few Republicans would support the following. And a lot of you will disagree with me on this, but I'm going to throw it out there. Why don't we actually increase the Board of Education budget above the ask to the tune of however much it costs to have an efficiency study done to figure out whether the delivery of benefits really is, shouldn't be trending so far above inflation as it is, and whether there are places in central office where we can cut. But what I propose is if we do that, and again, we can't direct the Board of Education to do it, that we all live with the results, come what may. You know, if there are areas that someone independent says where we should cut, or whether they find that there's really no place to cut. That's all I have to say. I welcome you all to continue the dialogue. I'm very accessible either by email or Facebook, and thank you.
Hi, everyone. Sheila Marmion. It's great to see everyone here. Thank you so much for coming forward and talking to us. It's been hard to speak so directly with people for a number of years, and it really is so enlightening and informative and educational, and thank you to everybody. I just want to say I hear you, and my other board members hear you, and I'll echo what others have said in that this role is hard because you make tough choices, and they are choices, and we have to look at both the town side and the Board of Ed side, and the Board of Ed takes up so much of our budget that we have to take a hard look at that. That having been said, when I ran this past November, I talked to a lot of people, and I talked to Board of Ed members and said, talk to me about education, what's going on from a budget standpoint. And what I kept hearing again and again and again is that we need to invest in education in this town. We can't continue to have our educational system, I don't know what the expression is, death by 1,000 cuts. Cut. We can't do it. I view education in this town, in every town, as an investment. It's got to be both a short-term investment and a long-term investment. The short-term investment now will yield long-term benefits and deliver value. And I was thinking about what Mr. Mottola said in terms of the Rolling Stones. You can't always get what you want, but you get what you need, right? You get what you need. And so, did you? Yeah. So I just want to say, you get what you need. We need investment in education, and I can't be more articulate than the people here today. I feel strongly about this, not only as a parent. I have 3 kids who went through this school system, and I'm very thankful, not only as a parent, but as a taxpayer, and we look at the value that a strong educational system delivers in terms of housing values, in terms of an educated populace, in terms of the incredible staff who live in this town, who live and work in this town. So I'm a strong proponent of education, and am very supportive of the Board of Ed budget that was originally put forth. So I'll say that. That having been said, if we switch to the other side, we also heard from a number of people advocating on the senior, the Health and Human Services budget, and I fully support that and think it's necessary. And when we look at the town side in terms of some increases, I think there are some areas there that we can look at closely, and I'll be prepared to do that. But it is ultimately, it's a balancing act, so we're going to look at everything. But again, I just want to thank everybody for coming out today, and it's great to see everybody. So thank you.
Hi, everybody. Craig Curley. I also want to thank everyone for coming out today. I didn't prepare remarks today. It's not like me to be unprepared. I over-prepare almost at everything I do, but I really wanted to be able to listen today and kind of react. And I was really moved by the passion of some of the people that spoke today, students, teachers, parents, seniors. It really makes me feel good about the community that we live in. And I'm really glad that I ran for this position because I really want to give back to this community. And I can tell you, all of us on this board have been working with this budget since it was delivered to us at the beginning of the month. And we've been doing our due diligence. We can't just simply approve a budget and rubber stamp it without going through the process. And I can tell you, we've all taken it very seriously. I know I have, and I feel really good about the work that we've done so far, and I look forward to our deliberation and our debate over the next week before our vote. But it was really the color of the commentary today that helped fill in the blanks for me. I feel strongly about some of the things in the budget, And I'm not afraid to say that I am in favor of fully restoring the Board of Education budget. I think it's clear that the teachers are under stress. They've been working under stress for a couple of years, the administrators as well, and the students are showing it too. And we need to support them. So I'm really glad that hearing from you today helped solidify my views on that, so thank you. I also want to mention that I do think that the administration, both the town administration and the Board of Ed, did an excellent job in preparing the budgets that we've reviewed. I've been working with budgets for 30 years in my career, and I can say that it's been, there's a lot of detail in there, and it's been a challenge to get through it all, but it's a good challenge. And I respect that the first select woman has made an effort to try and keep taxes low. Her proposed budget was roughly a 1% increase year over year in the mill rate. And I know, given the inflation that we're all facing recently, everyone wants to save an extra dollar in their pocket. However, historically, we've always, as a town and as a community, we've always tried to budget at or around or slightly below inflation. Historically, it's been about 2%. If we were to not try and find cuts somewhere in the budget to help offset and be able to restore on the Board of Ed side, that 1% increase would go up to about 1.7, still under 2%. I don't want to be tone deaf to the fact that every extra dollar in a pocket matters. But it's not lost on me that as the new guy on this board who bought coffee and donuts that are sitting on that table back there, I spent more for coffee and donuts today than it would be for me to pay for the restoration of the full restoration of the Board of Ed, my share of it. That's not lost on me. We're really not talking about a lot of money in the grand scheme of things. So I look forward to a healthy debate with my colleagues next week. I appreciate everyone's effort. I appreciate everyone coming out today. And I'm confident that we'll end up in a good place at the end of this. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. I still have my mic. So Lori Charlton again. First of all, I want to reiterate what all of my colleagues said, which is thank you so much for coming out. It is incredibly valuable to hear from you directly and to be here in person. And I thank you for sitting here and sticking with us on a Saturday morning. And as I also said at the outset, this is, we were interrupted by the pandemic, and this is the first time this meeting has occurred since 2019. So I wasn't on the board in 2019, and so I actually went back and dug up some of the YouTube videos to help myself understand what was going to happen and see how the meeting was typically conducted. And, it was interesting what, some things stay the same. Back in 2019 and 2018, there were folks advocating for the budget, and there were others advocating to keep taxes as low as possible and talking about the unsustainability of spending increases. But what really struck me is how dramatically our world has changed in a couple of years, in a lot of ways. We are here dealing with the aftermath of a pandemic, and a lot of you have spoken to it. I don't have to tell you what that's meant to, not to mention those of us who have lost family, friends, colleagues, but what it's meant to children, seniors, business owners in our town, so many of it. You've lived it and you know it. But the other things that have changed, back in 2019 and 18, a lot of the discussion and the concern that the board had was around families moving out of town, declining property values in Fairfield, reduced state aid, a budget increase that was perhaps slightly higher than the very moderate rate of inflation that we were experiencing then. And so for everything negative that the pandemic has brought from us, it was, ironically, it was really striking to me that we sit here a couple of years later with an influx of new families in our community, with property values rising significantly, with our grand list having grown significantly, with a flood of state and federal money coming to our community, and looking at a budget that Mr. Curley said it better than I could. You know, while I don't want to be tone deaf to what that means to families at this time, is not even approaching the historic levels of inflation that we're seeing, thank God. So things are very different. And, you know, clearly none of those trends, to the extent they're positive, are long-term in nature. We know they won't be. So what I take out of that is just things change quickly, and we need to be focused on the long term for our community as well as the short term. We can't overcorrect in times like this. And so part of what that means to me in terms of looking at the long term is investing in our community, investing in education. I agree with the sentiments of my colleagues. I think that investing in education means dealing with the effects of the pandemic, dealing with these issues that will become more harmful and more expensive in the long term if we don't. So I fully appreciate that. I also think it means looking at all aspects of our budget, and, you know, at a time where we've got, you know, maybe for a brief period of time, federal and state money flowing in, surpluses in our budget, it means not squandering that to, you know, try and cover operating expenses or, you know, artificially, you know, reduce the tax rate at a level that's not sustainable. You know, I know it makes a great talking point to say we're below 1%, but, you know, those costs just come back to us. So, you know, so that's some of what I think about in terms of getting to a balanced budget or a, you know, balanced view of the budget and supporting the community for the long term. In terms of those state and federal dollars coming in terms of the surplus, I've heard people talk about, you know, perhaps using some of that surplus to support our education budget. I'm not really in support of that because I think we've got to create an education budget that we fund every year that's adequate. And I think any windfall of money that comes in, we really have to devote that to dealing with some of the looming liabilities that our town faces, the infrastructure that some of you have spoken about, whether that's HVAC in schools, whether it's dealing with town buildings that are deteriorating, or whether it's investing things that improve the quality of life for our residents, whether it be our senior center, our fields, you know, our recreational facilities, et cetera. So all of those things are top of mind for me as I think about this budget. And in closing, I want to say a couple of things. First, how incredibly appreciative I am of my colleagues who have put in so much time and effort to do this work. None of us like staying till midnight at meetings, but people are invested, people care, people ask a lot of questions, and it's been a very diligent effort, so I appreciate them very much. I also appreciate the effort by the first select woman and her team to put forth a budget that was thoughtful and that, you know, does some pretty good things to invest in the community. I will personally be advocating for some changes to that with my colleagues over the coming days because, you know, I think there's some areas where we can make changes and do better. And so I look forward to that process. So once again, I just want to sincerely thank all of you for being here. I can't tell you how great it is to be back with the community, to hear from you, thank you for coming out. Thank you for spending your time with us, for writing to us. We read every single email, honestly. We appreciate it. And we hope that you continue to stay engaged over not just the remainder of this week as our board votes, but as this budget moves its way through the RTM and becomes the final blueprint for what we want to do and what we stand for as a community over the next month or so. So thank you again.